Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one of the most emotional and soul-stirring stories you will ever hear. It's a story of love, betrayal, hope, and absolute patience. Before we dive in, please take a second to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and don't forget to comment. Thank you so much for doing so. I don't take your support for granted. It means a whole lot to me. I'm forever grateful. And to our story, listen carefully and attentively. Selena Carter had always believed that love could withstand anything. She believed in patience, kindness, and in the vows she had spoken at the altar 2 years earlier. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health. To her, those weren't just words. They were promises etched into her soul. Promises she intended to keep no matter the storms ahead. But Marcus Johnson, the man she loved with all her heart, didn't seem to see it that way. At first, their marriage was everything she had dreamed of. Marcus was charming, ambitious, and the kind of man who lit up a room with his confidence. Selena had fallen in love with him not just for his looks, but for the way he carried himself with pride and how he promised her a future that was secure, joyful, and full of laughter. They were both in their late 20s, raised in the same neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia. Selena had been the quiet, thoughtful type, always with her nose buried in a book or volunteering at the local community center. Marcus, on the other hand, was bold and outgoing, always surrounded by friends, always chasing big dreams. When they got married, it felt like the union of two worlds, her gentle patience balancing his fiery ambition. Selena often told herself, "Together, we're unstoppable." But then the whispers started. First from Marcus's family, then from neighbors, then from Marcus himself. 2 years and no baby. Marcus's mother would sigh, shaking her head whenever Selena visited. "Are you even trying, Selena? A woman's greatest blessing is to give her husband children. Don't you want to make this family proud?" Those words pierced Selena's heart like knives. She wanted children. She dreamed of cradling a baby in her arms, of hearing little footsteps patter across their home. But after 2 years of trying, of hospital visits, of whispered prayers at night, nothing had happened. Marcus tried to act supportive in the beginning. He'd hold her hand after a negative pregnancy test and say, "It's okay, baby. We'll keep trying." But slowly his tone began to change. The warmth in his eyes dimmed. His patience wore thin. Selena began noticing little things. The way Marcus stayed out later than usual, the way he flinched whenever someone asked when they were going to have kids, the sharpness in his voice when he looked at her. Then one evening everything shattered. It was a rainy Friday night. Selena had cooked his favorite meal, fried catfish, cornbread, and collard greens, hoping to lighten his mood after a long week at work. She set the table, lit a small candle, and even put on the soft jazz music Marcus loved. But when he walked through the door, drenched from the rain, his face wasn't the tired, grateful face of a husband returning home. It was twisted with something darker. "Selena," he said flatly, dropping his wet jacket on the couch. "We need to talk." Her heart clenched. Those 4 words never meant anything good. "Okay," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's wrong?" Marcus didn't sit. He didn't eat. He stood there, pacing, running his hands through his short-cropped hair, as if he was trying to find the right words. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and Selena felt like she was staring at a stranger. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice sharp. "I can't keep living like this, married to a woman who can't even give me a child." Selena's breath caught in her throat. "Marcus," she whispered, "don't say that. Please. You know I've been trying. I've been to doctors, I've prayed." "Prayed?" he scoffed, cutting her off. "What has prayer given us?" "Nothing. My friends laugh at me behind my back. My family looks at me like I'm cursed because of you. Do you know how it feels for a man to be embarrassed like that?" Tears welled in Selena's eyes. "I'm embarrassed too," she choked. "Do you think I don't feel the pain? Do you think I don't stay up at night wondering why my body won't do what it's supposed to do? I need you to stand by me, Marcus. That's what marriage is. Marriage is about building a family." Marcus snapped. His voice thundered through the room. louder than the rain outside. "And you can't even give me that. You're nothing but dead weight, Selena. I should have listened when people warned me not to marry you." Those words sliced through her like broken glass. Selena staggered back, pressing a trembling hand against the table for balance. Her chest felt tight, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Marcus, I love you," she whispered. Her voice cracked, the words barely audible. "We can get through this. Please don't give up on me." But Marcus's face was stone. "You need to leave," he said coldly. "Pack your things. I don't want you here anymore." For a moment, Selena just stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. The man who had once vowed to protect her, to cherish her, to love her unconditionally, was now discarding her like she was nothing. You're throwing me out?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm done, Selena," Marcus replied, his tone final. "Get out. Go find somewhere else to live. Maybe someone else can tolerate your failures." Her knees nearly buckled beneath her. She wanted to scream, to beg, to fight for their marriage. But when she looked into his eyes, there was no trace of the man she had loved. There was only coldness, resentment, and shame. She turned away, her tears falling freely now. She walked into their bedroom, her bedroom, and began folding her clothes with trembling hands. Every item she packed felt like another piece of her heart being ripped away. Marcus stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching with no emotion as she stuffed her belongings into a suitcase. When she finally zipped it shut, Selena took one last look at the home she thought she would raise a family in. She looked at Marcus, hoping, just hoping, that he would soften, that he would realize what he was doing. But he didn't. He simply said, "Close the door behind you." And with that, Selena Carter walked out into the stormy night, carrying nothing but her suitcase, her broken heart, and the bitter taste of betrayal. She had no idea where she was going. She had no plan. All she knew was that the life she once had was gone, and the man she loved had turned his back on her. But deep down, beneath all the pain, a spark flickered. It was faint, almost drowned out by grief. But it was there. And though Selena didn't know it yet, that spark would one day ignite into a fire so powerful, it would shake Marcus's world to its cold. The night Selena Carter walked out of her husband's house, the sky seemed to mourn with her. The rain poured so hard it soaked her clothes through, but she kept walking. Her suitcase felt heavy, not just with clothes, but with the weight of rejection, humiliation, and heartbreak. She didn't know where to go. She had no children to run to, no family that would welcome her with open arms. Her own parents had passed away years before, and her younger cousin, the only relative she had in Atlanta, was struggling just to feed her own children. Selena couldn't bring herself to be another burden. So she wandered. By the time she found herself at a cheap motel on the edge of town, her wallet was already crying. She had saved a little money from her job as an assistant at a law firm, but it wasn't much. She handed over cash for a week's stay, clutched the room key, and dragged herself to a room that smelled of damp carpet and cigarette smoke. She sank onto the bed and let out a sob that shook her entire body. For the first time in her life, Selena felt truly alone. The first week, Selena cried herself to sleep every night. The image of Marcus throwing her out replayed over and over in her head. She thought of the dinners they once shared, the laughter, the plans for the future, and how easily he had turned cold. But by the second week, reality hit harder than heartbreak. She had bills to pay, food to buy, and a job that was suddenly at risk. Marcus had called the law firm. His cousin worked there too, and spread ugly rumors. By the time Selena showed up for work, people were already whispering. She couldn't give him a child, she overheard one co-worker sneer. What kind of wife is that? Her cheeks burned. She wanted to scream. My worth isn't in my womb. But she kept her head down, working harder than ever, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But even her determination wasn't enough. One Friday afternoon, her boss called her into his office. He cleared his throat, looked everywhere but at her and said, "Selena, I'm afraid we'll have to let you go. It's nothing personal but things are complicated." Marcus has influence. Her heart sank. Influence. That meant Marcus was still pulling strings, still trying to punish her. She left the building with her box of belongings, tears burning her eyes. She had no husband, no job, and no home. Life spiraled fast. With no income, her motel savings dried up. Soon she was living out of her car. She parked behind grocery stores at night, pulling a blanket over herself and praying no one would notice. She showered at gas station bathrooms, brushed her teeth with bottled water, and scavenged for cheap meals at fast food dollar menus. Her once pristine hair became frizzy and unkempt. Her once bright eyes dulled with exhaustion. She could hardly recognize the woman staring back at her in the cracked rearview mirror. But what hurt the most wasn't the hunger, or the cold, or the stares from strangers. It was the silence. No one called to check on her. Not Marcus. Not his family. Not the friends who once laughed with her at barbecues. It was as if she had been erased. One night, curled up in the back seat of her car, she broke down. "God, why me?" she whispered, her voice raw. "I tried. Prayed. Gave him everything. Why wasn't it enough?" Her tears blurred her vision until she fell asleep from exhaustion. But life, cruel as it was, had a strange way of planting seeds in the darkest soil. One morning, while waiting in line at a community kitchen, Selena met an older woman named Gloria. She was in her late 50s, with warm brown skin and silver-streaked curls. Despite the hardship written on her face, her eyes carried a light that Selena hadn't seen in months. "You look like you need more than food, honey," Gloria said softly as they sat down with their trays. Selena blinked back tears. "I just need a reason to keep going." Gloria reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Baby, don't you know storms don't last forever? Sometimes God lets the rain fall so he can grow something in you. You're not done yet. You're just getting started." Those words lingered in Selena's mind long after the meal was over. For the first time in months, she felt a tiny flicker of hope. Gloria introduced Selena to a women's shelter that helped women get back on their feet. They offered her a bed, counseling, and even free classes for career training. At first, Selena hesitated. Pride whispered, "You shouldn't need help. You should have been enough for Marcus." But desperation drowned out her pride. She accepted the offer, and for the first time in months, she slept on a bed instead of a car seat. She threw herself into the classes: computer training, bookkeeping, financial literacy. She spent nights studying, determined to build a life that no man could ever take from her again. And then, life delivered a twist she never saw coming. During a routine health checkup at the shelter's clinic, the nurse frowned at Selena's chart. "Selena, did you know you're pregnant?" The words slammed into her like a thunderbolt. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. Pregnant," she stammered. That can't be. They said I couldn't." But it was real. After all the tears, after all the rejection, after Marcus had thrown her away for being barren, Selena was carrying life inside her. She pressed her hand against her stomach, tears streaming down her face. Tears of disbelief, of relief, of vindication. In that moment, the fire inside her roared back to life. Marcus had called her a failure. He had said she wasn't enough. But God, fate, or whatever higher power existed, had just written a different ending. Selena wasn't just going to survive. She was going to rise. And one day, Marcus would see exactly what kind of woman he had thrown away. The day Selena Carter walked out of the clinic with the news of her pregnancy, the sun felt warmer on her skin. For months, her world had been gray and lifeless, but now, there was color again. She placed her hand over her belly as she walked, a small smile breaking through her tears. She wasn't alone anymore. Inside her grew proof that life had not forgotten her. Proof that Marcus had been wrong. Proof that her story wasn't over. That night, lying on the bunk bed at the shelter, Selena whispered to her unborn child, "Baby, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't even have a home. But I promise you one thing, I will fight for you. I will fight harder than I ever have in my life. You will never feel abandoned like I did. You will know love." Her words became a vow, sealed in the silence of the dark room. From that moment on, Selina's grief turned into fuel. She stopped thinking about Marcus. She stopped wondering why me. Instead, she began to ask, what now? The women at the shelter noticed the change in her. Her eyes, once dim, now burned with quiet determination. She woke up early, studied harder, and volunteered to help others at the shelter. In return, they rallied around her, offering encouragement and support. The shelter's career program helped Selina land a part-time job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay wasn't much, but it was honest work. The smell of books comforted her, and the quiet hum of customers gave her peace. Her boss, a gentle older man named Mr. Anderson, quickly noticed her work ethic. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," he told her one afternoon. "Keep this up and you'll go far." Encouraged, Selina began saving every penny. She cut out every unnecessary expense, living frugally and carefully. She knew she couldn't afford luxuries, not with a baby on the way. At night she kept studying. She enrolled in online courses, learning accounting and business management. Sometimes she studied until her eyes blurred, but she never stopped. She wasn't just building for herself anymore. She was building for her child. The day her twins were born was both the hardest and happiest of her life. Yes, twins. She had gone into the hospital expecting one baby, but the doctor's smile widened as he announced, "Congratulations, Ms. Carter. You have 2 beautiful daughters." Selina sobbed uncontrollably as she held them, one in each arm. Tiny, fragile, and perfect. She named them Hope and Faith. Because that's what had carried her through the storm. The first year was brutal. Sleepless nights, endless crying, and the constant fear of not being enough weighed on her. But every time she looked into their eyes, she found strength she never knew she had. When they cried, she rocked them. When she was exhausted, she pushed through. When money ran low, she picked up extra shifts, sacrificing her own comfort to keep them fed. The shelter, the bookstore, and her own sheer will kept them afloat. And little by little, Selina began to rise. 3 years later, Selina had moved out of the shelter into a modest 2-bedroom apartment. The girls toddled around with giggles that filled the once empty silence of her life. She had also taken a bold step. With the encouragement of Mr. Anderson, she started her own small accounting business from home. At first, it was just neighbors and small community shops who trusted her with their finances. But word spread quickly. Selina was reliable, honest, and skilled. Her reputation grew. Soon she was handling accounts for larger businesses. She built her company from the ground up, one client at a time, fueled by grit and the determination to prove herself. Selina Carter, the woman Marcus had discarded, was now becoming a respected businesswoman. And she wasn't stopping. She began attending networking events, standing tall and confident in rooms full of powerful people. She dressed in sleek business attire, her natural curls shining, her presence magnetic. She no longer looked like the broken woman who once lived in her car. She looked like a woman who had fought fire with fire, and won. By the time Hope and Faith turned 5, Selina had transformed her small business into a full-fledged accounting firm. She employed 3 staff members, rented a polished office space, and even spoke at community events about financial literacy for women. Her daughters often sat in the office, coloring while she worked, and every time she looked at them, she remembered the promise she had made in the shelter. To fight for them, to love them, to never let them feel abandoned. And she had kept that promise. Life wasn't perfect. There were still long nights, hard days, and lingering pain from the past. But Selina had risen from rock bottom to a place of strength, dignity, and independence. She no longer thought of Marcus with bitterness. In fact, she hardly thought of him at all. But fate has a way of circling back. One evening, while tucking Hope and Faith into bed, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an invitation. An old acquaintance had sent it. She opened it, her eyes widening. Wedding invitation, Marcus Johnson and Candace Miller. Her ex-husband. Remarrying. Selina's heart pounded as she stared at the screen. And in that moment, she knew her story with Marcus wasn't quite finished. The wedding invitation lay on Selina's desk like a taunt. She had read the name on it a dozen times, her chest tightening with every glance. Marcus Johnson. The man who had once sworn to love her through thick and thin. The man who had thrown her out of their home when she couldn't bear children. The man who never knew that in the years since, she had not only risen from the ashes but had given birth to the very life he claimed she could not provide. Selina sat in her office chair, her fingers tapping against the polished wooden surface. Across the room, her daughters, Hope and Faith, were sprawled on the rug, giggling as they drew stick figures with bright crayons. Their laughter filled the space with warmth. Selina smiled at them, a bittersweet ache spreading in her chest. They were my strength, my reason, my victory. For years she had avoided Marcus. She never chased him, never begged him to take her back. She had built her own world, stronger and more beautiful than the one he had abandoned her in. But now fate was giving her a choice. To stay silent, or to return. And Selina Carter was not a woman who stayed silent anymore. That night, after tucking her daughters into bed, Selina stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She studied her reflection, her glowing skin, her determined eyes, her natural curls cascading down her shoulders. She thought about the woman Marcus had left behind. Broken. Defeated. That woman no longer existed. Instead, here stood a woman who had fought battles alone and emerged victorious. A woman who was both mother and provider, protector and dreamer. She whispered to herself. He needs to see what he threw away. And in that moment, her decision crystallized. She would go to his wedding. Not to beg. Not to cause a scene. But to stand there, tall and unshaken, with hope and faith by her side, living proof of his mistake. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind. Selina knew she couldn't just show up. She needed to arrive with grace, power, and dignity that would command every eye in the room. She booked a stylist, choosing a gown the color of midnight silk, sleek, elegant, with a slit that whispered confidence rather than arrogance. She paired it with silver heels that clicked with authority, and a necklace of pearls that had once belonged to her mother. For Hope and Faith, she chose matching white dresses with soft pink bows, their curls neatly styled, their shoes polished. She wanted them to look like the princesses they were. The night before the wedding, Selina sat with them on the bed. "Mommy, why are we going to this wedding?" Hope asked, her big brown eyes curious. Selina took a deep breath, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Because, baby, sometimes people need to be reminded of what they lost. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well." Faith tilted her head. "Is the man at the wedding Daddy?" Selina's chest tightened. She had never hidden the truth from them, but she had never poisoned their hearts either. "Yes," she whispered. "He's the man who didn't want us. But that's okay because we have each other. And we're stronger than ever." Her daughters hugged her tightly, their small arms giving her the courage she needed. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. The church was decorated with white roses and gold ribbons, filled with guests dressed in their finest. The air buzzed with laughter, chatter, and anticipation. Marcus stood at the altar in a sharp black tuxedo, his smile wide, his arms steady as he waited for his bride. He looked every bit the successful man he wanted the world to believe he was. Candace Miller, his soon-to-be wife, was a vision in ivory lace, her veil cascading down her back as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony began smoothly. Vows were exchanged, rings were slipped onto fingers, and the pastor's voice carried across the pews. And then, the doors at the back of the church opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Every head turned, and there she was, Selina Carter, radiant and poised, stepping gracefully into the room. Her gown shimmered under the stained glass light, her heels clicking against the marble floor. At her side walked two little girls, identical, angelic, their hands clutching hers. The whispers spread like wildfire. Who is she? Isn't that Marcus's ex-wife? Those children, they look just like him. Marcus's face paled as his eyes locked on hers. His confident smile faltered, his jaw tightening, his hands twitching at his sides. Selina met his gaze with calm defiance. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply walked down the aisle, each step echoing with the weight of her triumph. She stopped midway, her daughters standing proudly beside her. The church was silent, every guest holding their breath. "Hello, Marcus," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room. His throat worked, but no words came out. His eyes darted between her and the twins. "These are my daughters," Selina continued. "Hope, faith. The blessings I was told I would never have. The blessings I was thrown away for." A murmur spread through the pews, shock and judgment thick in the air. Selina's smile was serene, but her eyes glittered with fire. "I didn't come here to ruin your wedding. I came to show you what real strength looks like. You left me broken, Marcus. But look at me now. Look at us." Marcus's face reddened. His lips pressed into a thin line. Candace turned toward him, her smile frozen, her eyes wide with dawning realization. Selina took a step back, her daughter's hands still clasped in hers. "You wanted me gone because you thought I couldn't give you a family. But I gave myself something far greater. Built a life. I built an empire. And I raised 2 daughters who will grow up knowing their worth." She tilted her head, her voice calm but cutting. "Can you say the same, Marcus?" The silence in the church was deafening. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some glaring at Marcus, others whispering behind their hands. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked trapped, cornered, exposed. Selina, however, didn't wait for his response. She had said what she came to say. She had shown him and everyone else the truth. With her head held high, she turned, leading hope and faith back down the aisle. Her gown swished elegantly with every step, her daughter's laughter echoing softly as they walked away. And in that moment, Selina knew she had won. Not because she embarrassed Marcus. Not because she ruined his perfect day. But because she had shown him that the woman he discarded had risen higher than he could ever imagine. As the doors closed behind her, the sun bathed her in golden light. She smiled down at her daughters, her heart swelling with pride. The return was complete. And the best was yet to come. The doors of the church closed behind Selina with a heavy finality, but the whispers inside carried on long after she was gone. Hope and faith tugged gently at her hands as they skipped beside her, their laughter free, unaware of just how seismic their presence had been. Selina inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs. The sunlight outside the church felt warmer, brighter, like the universe itself was affirming her choice. She hadn't ruined Marcus's wedding. She hadn't screamed, cursed, or begged for validation. She had simply walked in, holding the very proof of her resilience, and left without needing anyone's permission to be proud of her journey. That, Selina thought, was the true triumph. Meanwhile, chaos rippled through the ceremony. Candace had frozen in place, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Her perfectly crafted smile shattered, replaced by suspicion and fury. "Marcus," she hissed under her breath, her eyes narrowing. "Those girls, they look exactly like you. Care to explain?" The guests were already buzzing, some openly staring, others whispering too loudly for Marcus to ignore. I don't," Marcus stammered, his face pale, sweat beading at his temples. He looked cornered, exposed, stripped of the polished image he had worked so hard to maintain. Candace's father, a stern man with a booming voice, stood up from the front pew. "Marcus, is it true? Did you cast out your wife for being childless, only for her to have your children? What kind of man does that?" The weight of the judgment pressed down on Marcus. The respect he once commanded, the admiration he had worked to build, all of it crumbled in an instant. And Marcus realized, too late, that Selina hadn't just shown up. She had exposed him. Back at home, Selena poured lemonade for Hope and Faith as they sat at the kitchen table, their crayons and coloring books spread out in front of them. She watched them draw, their little hands moving eagerly, their eyes shining with innocence. They were her joy, her healing, her victory. For years, Selena had believed her worth was tied to Marcus's love. That without his approval, she was nothing. But the truth had been so much bigger than that. Her worth was in her perseverance. Her worth was in the way she had survived heartbreak and found a way to thrive. Her worth was in the daughters who called her Mommy every morning, wrapping their arms around her neck with pure love. That night, as she tucked them into bed, Faith yawned and asked softly, "Mommy, did Daddy see us today?" Selena's heart clenched. She smoothed the blanket over her daughter and kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. He saw you. And he'll never forget it." Hope blinked sleepily. "Is he coming to live with us now?" Selena smiled sadly. "No, sweetheart. He's not. And that's okay. We don't need him to be happy. We have everything we need right here." The girls nodded, drifting off to sleep with peaceful smiles. Selena closed the door gently, her heart steady. She had come full circle. Word of what had happened at the wedding spread quickly. Marcus's reputation took a devastating hit. Colleagues, clients, even friends began to see him in a new light, not as the successful, respectable man he pretended to be, but as the cruel husband who discarded his wife, only to be exposed on the happiest day of his life. Candace, humiliated and furious, called off the wedding that same night. "You let me stand there, looking like a fool, while your ex-wife paraded the children you abandoned down the aisle. You're a liar, Marcus. And worse, you're pathetic." Marcus tried to explain, tried to twist the truth into something forgivable. But there was no coming back from what everyone had seen with their own eyes. He had lost Selena. He had lost Candace. And now, he was losing the respect of everyone who once admired him. The life he had built on pride and pretense was collapsing. A week later, Selena sat in her office overlooking the city. She was no longer the broken woman who had been cast aside. She was a thriving businesswoman, a loving mother, and a woman who had rewritten her story on her own terms. Her assistant knocked softly on the door. "Miss Carter, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Selena looked up, her brow arching. "Who is it?" The door opened and Marcus stepped inside. His suit was wrinkled, his face drawn, his eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the confident man she had once married. Selena leaned back in her chair, her expression cool and unreadable. "Selena," Marcus began, his voice low, almost pleading. "I made a mistake. I see that now. Please, give me another chance. For the girls, if not for us." Selena stared at him for a long moment, then stood, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked around the desk. She stopped just inches from him, her eyes steady. "You threw me away, Marcus. You left me to suffer. And now that I've built myself back up, you think you can just walk back into my life?" He opened his mouth, but she raised a hand, silencing him. "I don't need you. They don't need you. We're doing just fine without you. And the truth is," her voice dropped to a whisper, "the best thing you ever did for me was throwing me out. Because it forced me to find my strength." Marcus flinched, his shoulders slumping, his gaze falling to the floor. Selena walked to the door, opening it wide. "Goodbye, Marcus. Don't come back." He hesitated, as if hoping she'd change her mind. But she didn't. She never would. With a heavy sigh, Marcus walked out, the sound of the door closing behind him sealing his fate. Later that evening, Selena stood on the balcony of her apartment, her daughters giggling inside as they played with their dolls. She looked out at the city skyline, her heart full. She had been broken once, cast aside, humiliated. But now she stood taller than ever. Not because of revenge. Not because Marcus had fallen. But because she had risen. Her story was no longer one of rejection. It was a story of triumph. A story of healing. A story of love that bloomed in the most unexpected way, through the daughters who gave her life meaning. Selena smiled, whispering to the night sky. We won. And deep in her heart she knew. This was just the beginning of a new chapter.